everybody, it's Joe Parr, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It Fetched It. This week we are going to be talking all about effective dog training, and we are going to have this conversation with our guest expert, Jamie Penrith. We are very excited to have you on this call and to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you for asking me. I've got to be completely honest. I've shied away from doing this sort of things for the past 18 months or so. It's been a while since I've sat and done any kind of live or a podcast like this. So if it's a bit rusty, then bear with me. But I'll be straight.
Because you do have, or you co-host a podcast, don't you? Or you've been part of that for quite a while.
Yeah, we've got a Dog Scholar podcast, which is myself and another trainer, Danny, and Sabrina, who's a neuroscientist, brilliant academic mind, and as well brilliant professionally in her own career. And we decided to do that to take common questions or things that people might find interesting, take the science that supports that, challenge that, break it down with a scientist, see whether or not it stands up and see how it applies in the real world. The idea of having the two trainers there as well who work with problematic dogs a lot of the time, to see how relevant that is, because there's a lot of the time that advice towards dog owners is being driven by science and pushed by science. You think that's fine, but it's got to have relevance in real life settings, or else you're just being driven by findings, if you like, rather than what actually happens and what works.
Let's start, Jamie, with a little bit about your background. Can you tell me how you got into dog training and what led you to where you are today?
So if I go back, I'll give you a brief summary of me. I grew up in the countryside. I have a massive love. I've always had a massive love of animals, particularly, and nature, and just outdoors, the outdoors. I'm not a rock climbing, mountain bikey sort of person. I like seeing life. And I was a sort of person who tapped spiders' webs to see how long it took before they came out and things like that. I was fascinated. Nature fascinated me. And a farmer at the bottom of our house where we grew up used to shoot corvids on a Sunday that used to be over his strawberry field. And I used to sit on the bottom of my garden wall and belt it down through the field with a cardboard box and pick up these jackdaws and crows and magpies and things as they fell. And if there were any that had any signs of life left in them, I used to run back and try and get my dad to take them to the vets and things like that. Although I completely sympathise with any farmer or anybody who's having to do control for their own reasons. So animals has always been something that I've been into. And during my late teens, whilst I was working down at a seaside town in Cornwall, I saw a woman with a police dog working crowd control, and I thought I'd like to do that. That looks like it would be good. Fast forward, I ended up working police dogs for just shy of 10 years. And that basically gave me the opportunity to take my love of animals and earn from it and do something else that fascinates me, something else that I'm very passionate about, is doing what's right, okay, doing what's fair. So policing for me was about doing the right thing. I wanted to try and help, and doing that with animals was just like with dogs, was just like the icing on the cake. And then I got really into dogs. I did a foundation degree in canine studies. I began taking courses to learn more. I wanted to challenge the way that I trained dogs, the way that I understood dogs. I went completely, I thought, you know what, mate, if you think stuff, let's see. And I pushed myself entirely down what you would now call reward-based or force-free channels. So I trained entirely that way for a period of time. And then there was a saying that people used to say, once you crossed over, you'll never cross back, which basically means it's all this sort of like online ideological talk of, if you train in this way and then you train in this way, you'll never go back to training in this way sort of thing. So it's like this bridge between the two, the binary sort of styles as people see it. But I crossed back, and I run across that bridge. Depending on what I'm doing, I go one side to the other. And then I started working dogs professionally with people, doing all sorts of behavior, all sorts of obedience, taking on anything really. And then for me, I guess stemming from my childhood, when I was a kid, I used to look out my bedroom window of a morning, and if there were sheep that were on their back in the field, I'd whiz over in my pajamas and try and turn this sheep back up onto its feet and try and save them. So livestock was something that I was interested in. And then I went down the route of livestock attacks by dogs, and I was seeing how much that is and continues to fail. and then dogs and predation, dogs towards other animals, how people can control that better, how people can control their dogs better. But to be honest with you, Joe, everything that I do and have done, I've done a lot more besides, but I can't be bothered to bore you with it. But everything that I do and that I have done, I would like to think that I've got a very strong ethical compass. I won't do anything that I think isn't right, isn't in the best interest of the dog or other animals affected by the dog or people affected by the dog in the long term. So I'm beyond the short range view of things. I like to look at things on a broad scale, a broad lens, and think, how can I best help this animal, this owner, this pair in life, and make things better for them if I can. Obviously, no one's a magician, are they? So you can only do what you can and hope that people will take it on. But that's a driving force for me, and pushing people as well to set up the Association of Responsible Dog Owners in 2018 with a view to give people a voice in Parliament where the decision making's taken place, but for dog owners to be heard, because traditionally it's always been other stakeholder groups like charities or the Kennel Club or the RSPCA/charities, police, local councils, politicians, but never the actual owners themselves, never the actual people. So you're talking about people and not allowing them to be present to speak for themselves, which I thought was wrong. So that association, ARDO, was set up to try and counter that. And that pushing responsible dog ownership, pushing an understanding of what a dog actually is, being a realist, and hopefully educating people through experience is something that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, and I think the work you're doing, if people aren't aware of you, we'll give out all the details at the end of the podcast of where they can find you on Instagram and everything. But I've followed you for quite a while because I am really interested in the conversations that you have and the type of conversations you have and how you broach what can be seen as controversial subjects. But I grew up on a small holding. My first dog was a Labrador. I was 1 year old. I can't even remember the story, but my dad's told it to me enough in my family so I understand it. And in the day, he would lay on the garden with me while I was playing, and there'd be all little lambs running around the garden with him, and he was absolutely fine. And one night, the local farm came down and said, "Ray, your dog, your Labrador is killing my lambs." And Dad was like, "It's not." So the next night, he went up and waited. And we lived in a time when dogs lived on the yard. It was very different farm to how we live in the street. Dad went up there. Dad saw the dog's name was Griff. So Dad saw Griff killing the lambs, sorry. And then the next day, he shot Griff. There was no conversation. My father shot Griff. He would not in any way tolerate that behaviour. Now, a lot of people could hear that story and say, "Oh my God, that's dreadful." But then my father came from a farming background, knew what livestock was worth to him, knew what dead stock was worth to him, knew that there was probably a chance you were never going to change, or in his eyes, change that dog's behaviour. If somebody had said to me, if I'd had a voice, even if I don't even know if I could talk at that point, "Would you like your dog to be trained in a way that he can still live, but not do what he's doing? Or do you want him put to sleep?" I would have probably said, and if my father had even been aware of it, I think, train the dog. If there's a way we can stop him doing this and keep him alive, do it. But the reality of it is, as the years go on, as owners, as society, we tend to see more and more dogs killing livestock and less control of dogs, like in public parks, etc. Let's just jump into the conversation. Where do you think that we are getting it wrong with our understanding, firstly, of the fact that a dog is a predator?
Brilliant question. Absolutely brilliant question. And I think the first thing I want to say on that is I'm not a finger pointer. Right? So I'm not going to say it's the owner's fault, it's somebody else's fault. You should do this, you should do that. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people, nobody goes out, unless you're half-witted, nobody goes out and thinks it's a nice day to let my dog go and kill some innocent animals, whether that's livestock, whether that's wildlife or whatever. Nobody really sets out to do that unless you've got that kind of wicked intent. And you can't do anything about somebody that's got wicked intent. If they're not prepared to change, and or that level of ignorance, they're not prepared to change, there's very little you can do about that. But the vast majority of people, so like I'll try not to be livestock attack centric, but let's say that people come to me and their dogs have attacked kill sheep. And oftentimes that dog may have done that 3 or 4 times over. And they don't get reported. So that's of the hundreds and hundreds, if not, well, it is thousands of incidents that I've dealt with, they haven't been reported. Sometimes you'll get people who, if the farmer's there, they'll go and they'll offer compensation. They're absolutely mortified. And the farmers are, thank Christ you've come forward. So many people don't. And thank you. Just make sure your bloody dog doesn't do it again if I catch him again. And everybody understands that, which is why they then go and seek out help. Like I say, the people who aren't truly ignorant. The reason for it is that people don't believe, they don't understand what a predator is. If you had a tiger at the end of your lead and you were walking through a gazelle pen, you wouldn't walk through the gazelle pen. And if your tiger broke free of your lead and went after them, you wouldn't be surprised. And you also wouldn't really think, I'll be able to hold him back if he decides to go for it. So a lead is going to be sufficient for me. Whereas what people are getting is this Disneyfication of what dogs are, okay? Because it pays. That's the reason why, is because it is a multi-billion-pound industry per year. The dog, the companion animal, if you like, industry, you're not allowed to say pet anymore. The companion, that implies ownership, which means that you're taking mastery, which is wrong. But anyway, the pet industry, the companion animal industry is worth a lot of money. And if I can make you feel like you need my stuff, you need this by making you morphing that animal into a child, and making you see it in the same way that you see children. So the same way that you would care for them, you need to care for it. But then it goes on to say, let's take it even further and say they think like your child. They've got the average sort of like human mentality of a 2 to 3 year old. Would you do these sort of things to a 2 to 3 year old? Look at this. We have this. If your dog pulls, you don't need to do that. If your dog pulls, we have these. They're comfortable. They prevent them from doing it like you would with children. And it's a sort of gray area because nobody's out there thinking, it's a bloody animal, do what you like. And again, you might have a small percentage, but again, those sort of people shouldn't be near animals anyway. But really, you've got people that want to do the best that they can. They're being fed information right from the outset, whether that's from puppy socialization episodes in veterinary practices, whether that's from play groups or puppy training classes that people go on. It's everything at the time when an animal is most receptive to learn the things that are going to be most beneficial throughout the rest of its life. People are being told to deny the dog that because it's not fair, because it's a baby and and they wait until problems manifest to where the people think, geez, what the hell, where did this come from? The term, she's never done that before, or he's never done that before, which every dog trainer on the planet will have heard somebody say, or somebody will have said it, certainly when it comes to dogs attacking other animals, is because people have been told that is unlikely to happen. And they've been told, almost training secondary. So this is where there's a major problem as well, is that restraining is seen as being the answer. Put a lead on and that's the answer. And you'll see it everywhere. Everybody, just keep them on a bloody lead. Put a lead on it. Blah, blah, blah. Absolutely fine. Yeah, put a lead on it. Put a lead on it. But that hasn't been sufficient for the past 70 years. It hasn't been sufficient. Attacks are going up. Incidents of uncontrolled dogs are going up. The surrenders are going up. Euthanasias of healthy dogs are going up. Proven, veterinary statistic proven for undesirable behaviours. Everything's increasing. So you've got to ask yourself, wherein lies the problem? What's going on here? And this training taking a secondary place, certainly with livestock attacks, to restraining or putting up signs or increasing the penalty afterwards or things like that. People are being denied the right, I would say, to know what dogs are capable of and what they will do given the opportunity.
Isn't there though a baffling contradiction? And I know you see it and I see it, and it makes me so confused. In one way, we're saying they're like our children, we shouldn't do these things. But then the other side of that, we're like, pop them on a lead, don't take them off. We wouldn't do that to our children. Sedate them. We wouldn't do that to our children. Give them up and put them in a rehoming centre because you cannot control their behaviour at home. Hopefully we wouldn't do that with our children for the majority of us. All these things, I'm like, where or at what point are we as society going to get a grip? Because the reality of it being, you have to choose the way we're looking at them. Now, in my eyes, my dogs are my pets. They'll always be my pets. Nobody's going to make me call them something else. And pet to me is a term of endearment.
Yeah.
But it also identifies the fact you are not human. You are my family, but you are not my family in the same sense as people who walk around here on two legs, have conversations with me, have the capability to do the things you can't. And in my eyes, I'm sure I'll probably get some replies for this, my dogs will always become lower than my family because I think in everything there has to be a pecking order. Do I love my dogs to death? Absolutely. Am I going to tolerate my dogs biting my family? No, I am not. Am I going to tolerate my dogs standing on kitchen counters? No, I certainly am not. I see where their paws go outside. All these little things I just get, and I'm sure you get, it'll be like, we've lost the plot a little bit about common sense.
I think that goes across the board in society in general. I think the way that we treat our animals is a reflection of the way that we're treating a lot of things, or the way that we approach a lot of things. But this sort of like loss of a grip on, I'm not saying this, right? I'm not saying this in a derogatory way at anyone. If somebody wants to see themselves as the parent to their fur child, and they want to have puppy showers, and they want to do whatever they want, and their dog goes on and it lives a happy and fulfilled life as a dog, and it does what dogs need to do, its needs are met, fine, over to you, whatever, live your life. I don't, like we were saying earlier on with the individual aspect of it, things need to be looked at on a case by case basis. But I think where that is being pushed, if you say like that, I don't want my dogs jumping up on the side, I don't want my dogs doing that, I don't want my, no, you'll be out if you do. That should be down to you. That's fine. That's for anybody else. If they've got problematic behaviors and they think, no, I can't have that, the dog's got to know that it can't do that. It should be, that's down to you. As long as the dog is fine, as long as you're doing it for the right reason, that's down to you. But we have this knack of having to have a group view of something, and you're either in it or you're out. There is no, as a nation, as a society, as a world of inclusivity and acceptance, there's a hell of a lot of rejection and a hell of a lot of condemnation within the dog training world for somebody having a different view, or for somebody treating their own animal perhaps differently, or training it differently, or interacting with it, the husbandry or whatever, differently to how I might see it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. As long as that animal's fulfilled, it might be different to me. But what we've got instead is this thing where that as I say, that individual view of things is being lost. It's being lost. And you only have to look on any dog trainer's social media platform, and at some point someone will have got bombarded with hate from somebody. It's a vicious world. I didn't know anything. It was nothing like that in policing. It's obscene. Death threats and things like that, and what should have happened to your children at birth, etc., coming through on emails, just because you talk about animals being animals, like you, same as you. I love my dogs to pieces, and if I can, sorry if you can edit this out, but I don't give a shit about some of the things that they do at home. They'll come up with me, we'll cuddle, we'll roll on the floor, they'll jump on the sofa when I call them up, if I tell them to get off. They're not, for me, they're not tools as such, but I don't have anything wrong. For a farmer, for a shepherd, my dog, perhaps I have a different view of it. It is a tool. It helps me to do a job. That's not wrong. And it's not wrong that the person wants to love their dog and not see them as, no, you need to do X, Y, Z because you are simply a tool. Everybody's got a place. Every viewer's got a place. For me, as long as the animal is safe, as long as other people and other animals are safe, as long as needs are being fulfilled, genetic predispositions, what the dog is, what it would like to do, are being met, whether you train at something that you don't actually compete in or that you don't actually take part in, but it's what the dog was bred for, so you honor that in some kind of way, or you substitute what the dog does because you couldn't really do that, so you put in something else that's very similar to, fine. Absolutely fine. Anything else is down to you, but it's just got to come down to responsibility and making sure that the dog its needs are met.
You're absolutely right. And like when I first went into working with dogs, it was with my dad and it was on beating line. So I was out on the stage straight from the start. And now dad's not here. He passed away nearly 5 years ago. I don't want to go out. I've tried going out without him and I just don't want to be there. It's too hard for me. So my dogs, I say to people all the time, I laugh, they're non-working dogs. They know how to do the job on an estate. But for me, I just, as you just said, I just take them out. We do it with dummies. We change environments. We do all those things. And I think the part that I love is if you ask the dog the question, are you happy and healthy and cared for? They say, yes, I certainly am. I love it. Because they get to do it. But the bit you touched on there, and I think this is where we are amazing at it within our group, and we see it in other groups where they've got it amazing, and other groups where it's just not there, is responsibility. A responsibility for the fact that your little predator on lead is a predator, and that if it gets off and goes and, I don't know, runs across the road, makes somebody swerve on a bike, all those things, you must be responsible for that, because dogs don't understand they're living in a human world. They don't understand there are rules unless we give them guidelines of what is, shall we say, acceptable, as in the fact that if you're walking nicely to heel alongside the road, you cannot dart out in front of a car. And if you're, I don't know, if you're jumping all over people who might not like that being done to them, that's not right. Regardless of your view of your dog, you've still got to be, when you go into the outside world, that you are in control of their behavior.
You've got a moral responsibility, you've got a legal responsibility, you've got social responsibility to do that. As well as the predator, there's the fact that a dog's an opportunistic predator. So if the need arises, sometimes when I might not even think, you'll know this, and God knows how many people on your group will know this, you can have a dog that you're out working with, that you're out training, that you're out just walking and exercising in a completely sterile area, and you think everything is bang on. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to drop the long line. I'm going to take the long line off. Let's test this recall. Let's see. Let's test this stop. Let's see what we've got. And all of a sudden, the dog's like that, and you think, oh, clock something, and boom, and away they go. And there are people whose dog, you could look with binoculars and you wouldn't see anything because the dog's seeing through its nose or through its ears in some case, and it's gone. And once that dog goes, it can find itself in all manner of trouble that you cannot possibly have known. So you could say, I was being responsible. I was being responsible. But more often, should the dog go on to attack something else, or more likely, you will be accused of being irresponsible by the person involved, or by what we used to call in the police, the 9 o'clock jury, the next morning, people making decisions on something they weren't actually involved in the cold light of day. But people would turn around and say, that was irresponsible. You should have known. You should have had them under control. But the person, as far as they're concerned, they are being responsible. Dogs leap secure fields to get out. Dogs clear 6 foot. My dog Sherlock would clear a 7-foot fence, no problem at all, just on a recall from the other side of it, not even chasing something that he wants to go for. It's the responsibility aspect of it, and the opportunistic predator aspect of it comes from, I know that this is what I've got. I know that should the opportunity arise, that dog will go. I know that I may not always know when that opportunity is going to be. I might see nothing, see things as being completely safe. But if I know that, if I arm myself with the knowledge beforehand, that tells me, push yourself, push your training, push your dog's understanding, increase your reliability, increase the safety, and increase your responsibility. And it's not necessarily waiting until the horse has bolted and then thinking shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it's thinking that stallion's kicking it, it's dying to get out. Let's try and do some work with it so it understands not to boot the door and bolt in the first place. But that is what's seen. This is what's perverse, certainly with dogs attacking other animals, is like you say, you said earlier on about, I've seen dogs shot, and it's not a quick death in many instances, because you're not talking about an expert marksman, a range where you're going to get a clean shot in. A lot of the time, dogs get shot, dogs get euthanized as a result. They're not euthanized because that's just a relief from some kind of harm or suffering. They're not in harm. They're not in any disease. They're healthy dogs. They're killed. They get killed for being what they are. You get dogs that are rehomed as a result of it, where then they languish in this hell of can only go to a home that has, God knows what. If you were some sort of like hermit that lives on a lighthouse rock somewhere with no nearby water, you might be able to get one. But other than that, a lot of cases, these dogs are just forever stuck. And all of this stuff goes on that all involves suffering. And that's all okay. But to prevent the dog from doing it in the first place, even if that involves a negative, even if that involves punishment, and terminology is so lost, the use of aversive interventions and things like that is demonized. That is the worst possible thing. Why would you do that? How could you do that? Why should you do that? But people's inability or reluctance to look beyond that sort of immediate experience that a dog might have to consider the wider impact on other animals and other people and society as a whole is disappointing. For a nation of animal lovers, we need to be looking further than the single animal that's walking at the end of our lead.
It's again, it comes back to the confusion. One of our group experts, Samantha Taylor, teaches our ladies all the time, expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected all the time, especially with working dogs. They are sharp and, like you said, they are fast. And they are a little bit too intelligent sometimes for their own good, shall we say. They're thinking 2 steps ahead. But for me, again, I come to it at a very different position, I suppose, the most. I am responsible for a large amount of ladies, and I am not a dog trainer. In one side, that allows me the advantage of being able to say, I can talk to loads of dog trainers and get loads of perspectives for you, because I am no competition with them. I can collaborate, I can find stuff out for you, because I see it as no way being something that would interfere with my business. And it's a lovely position. It also has a negative side of it, in the fact that sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I don't know, because I'm not from that field. I work with the dogs in front of me. I'm not working with hundreds and hundreds of dogs to see how this is going to pan out. But I know from raising children, if they had a teacher who was saying to them, this is wrong, right, I'm not going to tell you why, and I'm not going to correct it, I'm not going to help guide you forward, I would be in there going, sorry, where are the corrections? Where is your guidance to make them better, to help them improve? And then I look at the world of dog training, and I can look at it as impartial eyes and say, what is wrong with correcting? Because if in work you would be corrected if you were wrong, and in school you would corrected if you're wrong, and if you're in a family home setting, your grandparents correct you, your parents correct you. Why are we not allowed to correct the dogs? And I know what you mean about terminology, because the first time we brought the word correction into our group, people in Canada were mad because it's seen as a horrific word. And I'm like, sorry, where have we again lost the capability to see what we mean? So we now changed it to constructively correct. Was that change necessary? Yes, it was, to try and get across our point of, we are saying to look for ways to help your dog with correction, not hinder your dog. But don't you find it a little bit like people get stuck on the terminology rather than the outcomes?
Yeah, they do. And the thing that you've got as well is there was quite a few good points that you brought up there. I'll try and come back to them. But when you talk about terminology, you have all of this bump, like behavioral psychology and stuff like that, that has found its way into animal training, and people take on words: reinforcement, quadrants, punishment, positive, negative, aversive. They take on these words without really understanding what they are. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense at all to people. I don't mean that. But what I mean is, if I say negative, somebody would think bad. Most people would think bad. Negative is removal. It's removal. It's the negative symbol. If I say positive, someone would think good. It is good. It is positive. Positive is to add. It is the addition. So training is the addition. If you're looking at behavioral psychology style quadrant stuff, operant conditioning, it's addition and it's removal. There is no place, there is nowhere in any sound scientific research that talks about painful, happy, sad, because these are like realms that, if you want to sit within that terminology world, sit within that terminology world. If you want to let it bleed into everyday normal people world, I don't mean that against people who like to speak in this sort of terminology, into normal people world, then allow people to understand what these terms mean, because words are weaponized in a war of trying to, which is ridiculous but true, in a war of trying to dominate an industry that's worth a lot of money. That's what it always comes down to, is money and politics, the two that like intrinsically linked. So by trying to make myself, I feel like I sound smarter because I'm going to use some terminology that most people think, what? And do you know what I've found personally as well from experience is people turn off, not on, when you start speaking like that, because you just think, oh, whatever. I try, when I work with people, to I speak like that way, but I try to break it down in a way that makes it sensible, that makes it so that people understand. It's simple. Dog training isn't difficult. Understanding how dogs learn isn't difficult. It's not difficult. It's made to appear difficult so that someone somewhere can benefit from that confusion by being the expert that comes in and provides the clarity. It isn't hard. But the idea that you only need to look in your dog training groups on your online pages or anything like that, a lot of the most vicious, punitive tongues sit inside the most kind, permissive mouths as far as social media is concerned. We don't like the idea of negative things. However, we'll block you. We'll ban you if you say anything that doesn't conform to what we believe. We do think that there should be a criminal culpability for certain things that you do, for certain things. We do believe that you should not be allowed to study in this particular course on this particular subject if you think that way. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. It's censorship that doesn't match the way that people are saying that they are. I'm telling you that I'm this kind person, that I'm a whatever, force free, or even reward based. Reward based. There is absolutely no definition of what reward based is, and neither should there be, because who in their right mind never, I don't even know how you could. I do not know how it would be possible to raise an animal, even if you were a really harmful, vicious person, without there being reward involved in it on some level. I'm not necessarily talking about giving treats or throwing balls or dummies or anything else, but to some degree, every person, a normal person, training and raising a dog, reward is involved. Therefore, we were all reward based, if you want to say that, but it's taken as a sort of badge of honor. And I'll speak from somebody who tried to go down that route, very committed to going down that route, to no slip leads, no pressure on the lead whatsoever, no verbal reprimands, if you want to call them that, corrections, absolutely nothing that the dog might possibly find unpleasant or wish to avoid, that I myself caused to happen. And it falls flat on its face when you meet reality. As much as you would love to believe that it didn't, it does. And that reality, where people think this just doesn't seem to work, it just doesn't seem right, it's because it isn't. Trust your intuition. Your gut will tell you.
It's really interesting you say that, because when I first started training, it was with my dad, and my dad was very much a traditional trainer. That's a funny word that we can bring into it as well, because as soon as you say traditional, people think harsh. And was he harsh? He wasn't abusive, but he certainly didn't take any nonsense from his dogs. Did he kick them around the field? No, he didn't. But did he show them anger? Same as he did, no different to how he taught us, like, oi, enough of that crap. And we lose his temper type of stuff. He used to take his hat off with the dogs, throw it on the floor. The dogs knew he was upset. So when I first started this, and I was exposed as a normal person to all these different ways, and I fell in love with the idea of positive only. But like you, it left me lacking. It didn't give me anything to do when my dog was like, for example, I'll use Ella, bless her, she gets loads of my grief. But Ella would walk beautifully to heel in the garden while I was rewarding her, and I didn't have to do anything. She was off lead. And then I would take her out, and she'd say, I don't care if you have a venison roast joint with you. I want to do this more than I want to do that. Now, we had 22 acres for her to run around and cause havoc with. And I was like, but at what point am I meant to? And my question always came back, at what point did I tell this dog that what it's doing is wrong? Because there was no way for me to go with it. I was like, I have this treat, I have this. I've been engaging with you multiple times a day for weeks and weeks, and we have got a really strong connection until the environment beats me. And the minute the environment beats me, I am lost what to do next. And slowly I came back to, I suppose I don't give myself a label, but I almost try to use values now. I just say, I'm really kind to my dogs, like I'm kind to my kids, and I love them both. But if they do something wrong, I'm going to tell them they've done something wrong. I'm verbally going to correct it. Enough of that now. And I think for me, that settles it. But do you think that because the public has been filled with this idea, you've got to be positive only, and you've got to be looking for these words on the internet, wherever you're looking for your trainer, look for these words, do this like softly way forward. Do you think that is driving people to look for the wrong training?
The wrong training probably for their dog in certain circumstances. For some people, it's fine. If you want to go and teach your dog to middle between your legs, or to stand up on the back legs and spin around, or whatever you want to do, fine, whatever. Fill your boots, do it with a piece of food, do it with a toy, and you'll never need anything else, and your dog will do that very well. A lot of other things, if you want to shape behaviors, you want to build behaviors, absolutely fine, do it. And seek out somebody who's very skilled at the timing and delivery of rewards and the understanding of ratios of reinforcement, etc., etc., etc. Do it. If you want to have a dog where you think, I just want you to be safe, mate. I want to go out. I want you to be, I don't want to be dragged everywhere. Come back when you're called. Stay there when I tell you to. Don't play up in the home. Be happy. You know, what I consider to be happy. Be sociable. Don't be freaked out by every bang or thing that moves down the road. Just give me an easy ride. I'll give you an easy ride. You give me an easy ride. Then I think you need to look for trainers who, not looking for accreditations, not looking for letters after names or anything like that, affiliations to certain other organizations. You want to be looking for somebody who can show that, not certainly with their own dog or with other people's dogs, but I want to be able to see it, because that won't lie to me. That won't lie to me. A lot of people will. I'll tell you what I want you to hear so that you take on my services. And I'm not, when I work with people, if anybody says to me, what methods do you use? I don't want to work with you. I don't want to work with you. Not because I'm a pig-headed thing, but I think we're going to be the wrong mindsets, because if you come thinking, I want to work in this particular style, then I'm the wrong person for you, because I don't shoehorn. I have people come and work. I'm the devil. I'll work with electronic collars as for predation, the most scientifically proven, the most repeatedly demonstrated, safe, effective, immediate, humane way of keeping those animals apart. If someone comes and works with me and thinks this is what I'd like to do, if I look, I said, no, you don't need that. No, you don't need that. We don't need to be doing this. We can do it like this. We can work like this. So I think it's a case of, when you're seeking something out, I think you need to, if it was me, if I was a dog owner and I'm seeking somebody out, personally, I'd go on if I could see them and I could see some stuff that they'd done, and if I could talk to them, I'd go on how I feel about, oh God, this sounds so woolly, but I'd go on how you talk to somebody and you will either think yes or no. You'll get this feeling of yes or no. I don't care what you line up. I don't care how many championships you've won. I don't care how many trophies you've got in your cabinet. That doesn't bother me. I need to actually have that sort of like feeling of, I like the way that the way that you go about doing things, or you seem, what I've seen of you doing things. I like the way, and also, if anybody tries to in any way push you in a certain direction and you feel uncomfortable with it, not a chance. And any trainer worth their salt would think, fair enough, absolutely fair enough. I'm not the person for you. So I'm not a huge fan of. I joined a few associations and took courses and stuff when I was in my positive only, whatever the hell that means, stage, but it never got me anywhere. And I just used to think, I learned some stuff, but
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely learned some stuff, but I almost feel something missing here. For me, this is how I want my life to be. For my dog, this is what my dog needs from me. Because, like you said, we always say train the dog in front of you, because they're the one that's going to tell you what they need. And when we start talking about things like electronic collars, prong collars, even slip leads, we have people join our group and they say, I've been told that I mustn't use a slip lead. It is really aversive. And people come to me and they say, can you help my dog? My dog is reactive. And my first question is, reactive to what? Are we talking about a dog that's gun shy? Are we talking about a dog that doesn't like cats? What are we talking here? And again, we keep on going back to terminology. But unless you know specifically what's wrong, or what's right, or what's needed, or what's lacking with the dog you are working with, how can you know what method you need?
you can't. You can't. You go. So there's a dog that I'm working with at the moment, a shepherd that I'm working with at the moment, and for a part of that, quite a while with the dog. It's not a what you'd term a traditional residential training thing. I want to work with the dog. The dog presented something that I thought, I want to work with that. I want to do it. So I asked if I could, rather than the person saying, can you? I said, can I? Which is a bit arse about face, isn't it? We eat beans for tea, but I'm happy. But it takes a while. I can't just start with that dog and think, this is what I'm going to do. Because how the hell can I do that? Until you've shown me this is who I am. This is this. And again, I'm not saying this in a woolly sense, but anybody who works with dogs will know this. Your own dogs or other people's dogs, you have to see, what are you? What makes you tick? What do you like? What do you not like? When are you most energetic? What things would you sooner avoid? What things would you sooner seek out? Which is the same as not really, but are you affectionate? How am I actually going to approach this? What are your good points? What are your bad points? And so you can't think, this is how I train like this, therefore all those pegs are going to fit my hole, because that just isn't going to happen. I get a kick out of dogs that challenge me. I enjoy I enjoy difficult dogs. I don't like boring dogs. I don't like dogs. I like a little bit of naughty, just because you can capitalize on it. You can bring it, and that naughtiness can become brilliance if you do things well. In most instances,
I suppose people always say, what about the dog's welfare and like the ethical considerations of this? For me, if we go back to where we started with this conversation, for me, I would have preferred for Griff to be alive. So for me, it would have shown, my dad could have shown compassion had he known about it, and e-collar trained him. I don't even know if it's banned in Wales, so I don't even know when that happened. I can't even remember in my life when that happened. But I suppose compassion and ethics is very much a subjective point, isn't it? Because
it is.
to a farmer, it wasn't very compassionate of the dog to rip my lambs to pieces. And what about the lamb's welfare? And they are absolutely valid in those points. And then the owner saying, why did they shoot my dog? What about the welfare of my dog? What about the compassion about the fact we've got to go home and tell the family the dog is dead? And there are all these subjective views. However, if we learn to deal with the dog in front of us and to train that dog in a way where we are 99.9, because I would never 100% trust any dog, we are 99.9% sure of how a dog's going to behave in certain environments because we've done the work needed to make sure of that. Surely that's what's best for the dog and for the dog's welfare and the dog, and to be ethical, is to make sure the dog can cope in the environments we take them.
So this is a way, it's true what you're saying, or to me, it's true. To somebody else, it probably each to their own. But to me, that is the job, is trying to, for me, trying to encourage people to think not just about attacks on livestock, but on everything, to think more broadly, to think more, how does this influence that? Does this influence that? If you spun that around, so what you were talking about there, I had a discussion with a national animal welfare charity head, couple of heads, scientific and companion animal, and it was a private discussion. And for the first part, what I will say, I won't name anybody or what the charity was, but for the first part, I will say I'm going to show you some videos, and the people present said, these are people that are pushing to ban not just electronic training collars, but pushing for slip leads, prong collars, anything that the dog might consider to be unpleasant, looking to ban the lot. And behind closed doors, we agree with you, but not everybody's like you. So my argument to that was, or my response to that was, then you have an education issue, not an issue with a piece of equipment. It's about educating people. And basically it came back, that's a logistical nightmare. It's far easier just to remove a tool, a piece of equipment, than it is to educate people where and when that might be beneficial, even though we know that it might be beneficial. So like when you're saying there about the dog being shot, that's ripping apart a farmer's animals, and the farmer sees things differently. My ethical view is different to your ethical view because it's my animals that are being killed by your animals. If I had 5 or 6 dogs, or let's say I had a litter of puppies and the mother, and another animal came in and was tearing apart my puppies, it was harrowing. My puppies are screaming, they're being torn limb from limb and limb from limb, and somebody shot the dog that was doing that after it had killed 7 or 8 of the puppies, and it killed no more of them. Would I think the person was wrong to have shot the dog when it's my animals, when it's my life that is being affected, directly impacted? And I would suspect that at that moment in time, not 9 o'clock jury view, not cold light of day view, but at that moment in time, a person would do anything possible to stop that dog from killing my animals. And it isn't that I hate that animal, I'm an animal hater. It's that I'm trying to prevent this carnage from going any further, and I don't want it to repeat itself. The bizarre thing is that like I said earlier on, that's something that can be taken as, yeah, I understand that. But the idea of making that dog think, I don't want to do that in the first place. I actually want to keep away from those puppies because they're bad news. I'll keep my distance and I'll go that way because I experienced something that I thought was unpleasant when I tried to do that previously. And people think that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. And we should definitely criminalize and penalize anybody who thinks about stopping the dog from wanting to do it in the first place. And I don't know where you go with that kind of logic. I don't really know that there's much. So you something to say on it. I'll let you speak.
But this is where I suppose I get baffled. And I've got quite a curious mind, and I try to keep my mind open to everything, especially with the women I work. Like in some countries, you're not allowed a door on the crate. In some countries, like New Zealand, they are already going through the process of banning the slip lead. So other countries are coming at this in the same way, which probably changes it. However, if we change our conversation and say, okay, what shall we do with the XL bullies who are murdering small children? Everyone is a lot of them. Even dogs that haven't done anything wrong, have never put a foot out of place, they have been held. And I think that is unethical, because dogs that have done nothing at all wrong have been, in my eyes, and this is probably controversial, murdered. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that on one side we're like, no, this is how society views something, but then you change one part of that, the same conversation, one part has changed, what's being killed, and we are like, oh no, kill them all. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know, where is the sensible ground here? Because what you're saying about the charity is, we can go on with this all day, me and you could probably have a 3-course meal about this and still not come to the end of it, is the fact that society keeps bending to what it thinks society wants to hear, not, well, what is in the best interest of the dog.
That's what you've just got it there. What society wants to hear. If I want to cause change and I want to go through political channels to solidify that in law, then I need to make those politicians see benefit to themselves in it and to push to them. Society wants to see the change. I, as a politician, as a decision maker, very few of me and my ilk are interested in the actual nuts and bolts of that. What I am interested in is, how many votes am I going to get? How long am I going to remain in the position that I'm in? So that's and you've got organizations with wealth and experience behind them and teams that are able to do this. So it's a big task. But I think, like, when we set up Ardo and getting people to actually encouraging people to stand up for themselves, whatever the topic is, if there's something that comes up where you think, hang on, this impacts on us. Slip leads, there's a lot of people, I should imagine, in this group who slip lead is a regular tool that they'd use. But I might vilify that tool. I might say, I'll use that. I wouldn't use a check chain. I wouldn't use a prong collar. I wouldn't use a remote collar. I wouldn't use whatever, but I'll use this tool. There is that's on the agenda. That's the next thing. It's the actual approach, and these things here are just, they're secondary. It's the approach that is being pushed to change, that we need to force all of these animals into this hole, that it works for all. And so a lot of the time when you get people who have strong feelings, and that's an important thing as well, strong feelings about something, certainly I've encountered with electronics, or you may even talk about with shooting, or any sort of like country pursuits, fishing, whatever it might be. There are people who have strong feelings about it. And very often I have no experience of it. And a lot of my strong feelings about it, certainly within dog training, have been stoked up by other people with an interest in making me have those strong feelings. If I tell you this is bad, what is it? What happened? This person did this to this dog. What? Yeah, they did this. And this is what it happens. And look at this research. That's what it says about them. I think, oh, you swine. I hate this person. And this person then comes along and says, hang on a minute. No, that isn't what happened. I don't care. I don't want to speak to you. I've been told what you do. And now I'm on the side of right and I'm on the side of good. So I need to know more about how good I am. And it starts to feed into this monster of anybody like you becomes the same as you, so that you're all bad, without me actually having any experience or any direct opportunity or doing anything like we're doing here, which is having that discussion, that open conversation to think, actually, is there some kind of common ground here? Do you know what I mean? Is there somewhere that we can actually meet and think, yeah, I think we agree at this point? And that isn't allowed to happen, because that will threaten the story. It will threaten the narrative that all of this, anything that you do where you talk about correcting your dog or verbally chastising your dog or anything, is wrong, and it can only ever be wrong. And that can't be threatened. If people start to actually think and experience, in particular experience, if I don't like something, I think, I'm going to go and have a look. I'm going to go and see if it's as bad as I think it is. I'm going to push myself through that discomfort barrier. And very often, experience will make me think, that isn't actually that isn't how it's been sold to me. That isn't what I believed. But that's an uncomfortable feeling to have. That sort of like, I was wrong, and I don't like being wrong. So it's far easier to think, I don't want to go and look. I don't want to find out, because then I remain right. Yeah, I might be ignorant, but I'm not even going to accept that. I'm just going to say, I don't need you to show me because I'm right. And it's trying to educate people, trying to encourage people by show. So a lot of the work that I do is showing work with dogs in all different settings, but to hopefully try and encourage people to think a little bit more without forcing anything on somebody and saying, look, this is right because I'm right and they're all wrong. I'm not into that. I've done it. I've done that sort of like mudslinging thing, like a couple of tribes of chimpanzees screaming and hollering at one another on either side of the bush. It doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't get anywhere. It just intensifies each side's, if you like, resistance. And also it's childish. It's childish. It just needs to, people need to be mature enough to think, let me find out. Let me make my own decisions based on what I've experienced, because my own experiences won't lie to me. I can trust that.
It's fascinating how many ladies will join our group and say to us, I don't have any plans on taking my dog on a shoot mind. I'm not going to do anything like that. And I say, not a problem. The large majority of our women will never take their dogs on a shoot. They're just teaching their dog using the similar methods, and a dummy takes the place of cold game. And I'm always happy how many women I see 2 years later on shoots, because I'm like, you've been open to it. You've kept your mind open like a parachute. You've listened to the conversations. We fight incredibly hard in our rule. I think our number one rule is be nice. If I see somebody use an exclamation mark, and this sounds really like over the top, but if I see somebody use an exclamation mark when we're not celebrating something, I will remove their post and say, don't do it. Because you're already suggesting that what they're doing is wrong. You've already used your text to slightly dig at that person. If I see somebody dig, it's like straight out with a comment and a conversation between me and you on why you have behaved in that way in our group. And it probably doesn't suit everybody, but it does mean the group feels incredibly safe in saying what is going on. Now, that's meant we can have very much open discussions like the ones we are having now. However, I still see people I know have been to you and you have saved their dog's life without a doubt, too scared to say that even within our group. And that I find sad, because instead of being able to share the conversation and say, look, I went and I took this dog and this happened, and now my dog, instead of having to always be on a lead, always having to be on a backup harness just in case something happened to the lead, all that type of behavior, now has their freedom back again, because you've given them their freedom back in the fact that they're able to come off lead. They don't look anywhere near livestock. And I think the fact that they're scared to have those conversations is probably what helps the, let's call them the other side, even though they're not the other side, but the people screaming the most to be heard the most, because we have very little sort of counteracting of the conversation.
There's that head above the parapet sort of, or keeping your head below the parapet mentality is incredibly common. I understand it. I understand it from someone's point of view, because you just think, why do I need to bring the rain? I'm better off, I'll do it. I have people contact me who say, da 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 da, can you help me with this? Yes, I can help with this. By the way, there's a caveat. I'm a positive reinforcement trainer. I can't have this affect my business. Nobody can know about it. That's happened lots. That's happened lots. And I've had some people who've come down and then have only disclosed that they're a trainer whilst we're going to say it isn't what I thought. But where people say, I can't have people know about it, so a lot of people that I know would say, tell them to sling the hook. If they're not going to be, if they're not prepared to speak out, then tell them to sling the hook. But I think, no, do what you want, because people talk. People do talk. And I think, come down. If you want to keep quiet, for whatever reasons you want to keep quiet, social media is hell when people decide that they're going to kick off. There's lots of horrible people and comments on social media. I understand it. But if people are a bit more prepared to think, it depends on your character, doesn't it? It depends on your personality type, and it depends on the company that you're in. And if you think this is safe company, this is your group. To me, I put a comment on Instagram about how it always seems to be a really nice community, really solid community, and where people can speak and speak easily and freely, which I really is very uncommon. I'm not in any forums. I used to run a forum, but I'm not in it. It takes too much too much out of me. So I don't, even if people at me in things to go, and I can't. Occasionally I slip back into my old habits, but it's, if you feel that you're in a group where you think, I can just speak easily about it, then the more people, this is the thing, the more people that do say, I don't really have an issue. I don't really see an issue if it's necessary, if it's beneficial. And I think I don't even need to say that I've done it. But even if I need to say, I think, correcting the dog in that point, or teaching the dog that the dog cannot kill that. No, you can't chase traffic, or you can't, you just can't. And I can see that as being beneficial in terms of welfare in the larger scale of things. The more people that do that, then the more the opposite notion that it can only be wrong will be squashed, will be suppressed, because there isn't, in terms of visible evidence, like you say there, I've seen it, and I've seen dogs that have been and trained and now they're safe in certain situations. If I can see it, that's very powerful. But a lot of the other arguments, so I'm not going to say groups or anything like that, but a lot of the arguments against what I would call individual training, situational training, what the animal requires, a lot of the people who are opposed to that don't actually have the visible evidence to support what they're saying. So we group of trainers and myself, it started off as just a thing where one guy said, if you can take a dog that's killed an animal, a particular type of animal, and you can train it not to kill that animal using food and toys and praise and no kind of force whatsoever, no kind of, by which I just mean negative experience for the animal that it either receives or it avoids. If you can train that, train it. And he said, I'll give you $2,500. So I said, I'll give you $2,500 as well. I didn't have it, but I just thought, gonna have to try and work hard, but I'll give you $2,500 as well. I would have given the $2,500. Anyway, this built up and up to about, I think it ended up about 60,000 quid in the end, 60,000 quid. And so we formalized a thing where we said, come along, we'll select the dog, you can train the dog, you can have 6 weeks, as many sessions throughout the day. When you're not with the dog, will be in the care of somebody else, so that we can know that it isn't receiving any other kind of additional input. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, all of the training will be live streamed. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, that dog will be left in a situation where that animal that it has previously killed or one of its kind is present. It won't be able to get to it. It wouldn't be able to kill it, but it is present. And so is the dog, but you're not. You're not. You have to be out of the situation. And what we want to see, will your training have changed the association that dog holds towards that animal when you're not there? Because that's all that matters, really, is when you're not there. If the dog happens to find itself in a situation by hook or by crook where you're absent. And we had a few people say, oh, I'll do it. But one was like a guy who works with aversive techniques, if you like. So we said, we can't have that, because it would just, someone will say staged, because and then there were other people who say, oh, it's anti-welfare, why would you put a dog in that situation? But ultimately, the moral of the story is, it wasn't to try and catch anybody out. It wasn't to try and yah-boo at somebody and stick your fingers up or anything. It was to demonstrate or to highlight the fact that there is a point in anything. Everything's got a limit. There's a point. And the question is, where is that point? Why have we reached that point, as in the limits of our training that we would like to do? And what are we going to do about it? How could we possibly go beyond that to push further and get better? But that was lost. The actual reasoning behind it was lost in this argument of them and us, which just isn't what it was about.
That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.